Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Cho and I'm an intern at Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects prospective law students to attorneys to learn more about the legal profession before they dive into law school. And we started doing these Zoom meetups every Tuesday and Thursday at the beginning of COVID-19 so that pre-law students, law students, lawyers, anyone remotely connected with the legal industry can really just interact and learn together. And if you've ever been to one of these before, I'm not Angie. These are usually hosted by our founder, Angie Visciani, but unfortunately she's stuck in a big snowstorm in Texas and she has no electricity, no pipes, no power, nothing. So she can't make it on the Zoom, but we are super excited to introduce Louise, who has spent close to 10 years in public and private accounting at small, regional, and big four firms before opening her own CPA. And she will share with us her top 5 tips for college and another 5 for your first job. So take it away, Louise.
Thank you. I was telling Catherine that I am a tax accountant, so I'm going to be going from a tax accountant perspective, but I do have several friends that are lawyers because accountants and lawyers tend to get along pretty darn well. Don't turn down an accountant if they want to be your friend. I'm going to share my screen for you. A little bit more about me is I went out on my own about 10 years ago when I had my first child. I love working for myself. I'm solo right now. And can you see my document with the top 5s?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So since then I had 2 more kids. So I am a mom of 3. COVID is a bit tricky, but you know what? You just keep on trucking. My youngest is 2.5. And at first I was like, if I had known this, I would never have had her. But then now, a year into it, I realized, wow, I am so glad I had her because she's just so fun and peppy and she just slows me down. And so I think that's a really important thing to do is remind yourself to slow down because COVID, law school, pre-law, whatever it is, whatever obstacles in front of you, you got to slow down and enjoy the small stuff or it's just not worth it. So, I am going to go through what I thought the top 5s were for college and law school and for your first job. And then there'll be some time at the end to ask questions or discuss or whatever. So I'll start with making the most of college and law school. Use your resources. So figure out from other students that are older than you, from the teachers, from the library, whoever there is, what sort of programs there are out there. Personally, I think volunteer programs are really an amazing experience. So for me in tax, there's VITA, or here in California, in the Bay Area, there's something called TaxAid. So being able to help low-income people prepare their taxes for free and learn about taxes and learn how to talk about taxes and meet people who do taxes is a really great experience. So in pre-law or law school, there are tons of opportunities. Not sure how they're affected by COVID, but there are tons of opportunities to be able to offer your skill set and your strengths to people who are not as fortunate. And especially if you can speak multiple languages, that is huge. So volunteering isn't just good for the heart, it's good for the community, and it's good for just helping you direct yourself to the next step in life. And it also looks good on your resume or your law school application. Okay, networking. So I'm going to go a little bit on a tangent here. The things they do not teach us in high school that they should have taught us is financial literacy, networking, and sales. So these are the 3 skills that you're going to have to build on your own, or when you get to a firm, that's where you can do it. In some opportunities, if you find a local business sorority or a sorority in general, there are opportunities to learn more about sales, like recruitment and networking. But financial literacy is just one of those hard ones. But you want to network with your professors. You want to network with your TAs. You want to network with other students, older than you, younger than you, the same as you, because you never know when you're going to sit next to someone and they grew up in the same hometown as you, or their brother was in high school with your sister. You know, you never know who you're going to meet and what that person can do for you. So networking is probably, it ties with number one for me. Also, by networking with your professors, it makes it easier to make special requests, get additional information, be able to have an email relationship with them if they're the type of professor that's open to that. And later on, if you need letter of recommendations or introductions to important people, the professors are the ones that are going to help you be able to do that. Next, interviews. I don't care if you have one law firm that you're dying to get into, do as many interviews as you humanly possibly can. The reason is every interview gives you practice, and practice is how you get to success. So there are going to be some interviews that leave you shitty, and there's going to be some interviews that leave you like, oh my gosh. And by the end of it, when you get to the amazing interview that you've been dying to have, you've had this practice. And who knows, maybe the interview that you, for the firm that you really want to be with, is maybe interview number 3. And you kind of feel down on yourself and you're like, whatever, I'm going to keep on going with my interviews, keep practicing. And say interview number 6, the person interviewing you is amazing. You relate to them. They ask great questions and you kick that interview out of the park. You actually look further into this firm and realize, wow, I never thought that this firm was out there. Maybe now you want to actually go with firm 6 instead of firm 3. So you want to keep your options open when you're interviewing. Internship. So internships, it's like, I interpret it as a job on a golden platter. There's no handcuffs to that platter. So just because you do an internship with one firm doesn't mean that you're married to continue with them. Because once you get into the workplace, even as an intern, there's going to be a different feel, a vibe, an environment, and you want it to fit you and your lifestyle and your values. And so just explore, have fun. A lot of firms spoil their interns, give them very good training, help you develop discipline, help you relate what you've learned in the classroom to what's in real life. So it's a no-brainer. And I want to say it's actually a requirement at a lot of schools to have an internship. But most importantly, when you find the time to slow down and give yourself a pat on the back, or like you just completed finals, have fun. Like develop your hobbies, develop, if you have a love for travel, whether it's domestic or international, figure out what sports you enjoy, whether you're watching them or actually partaking them in yourself. Because once you establish those good habits of having those hobbies, being able to travel, enjoying playing or watching sports, when you get into the real world in your real job, you'll be able to fall back on those hobbies you've already created. So one, you have a talking topic with people, so you don't always have to talk about work. 2, you've already got that into your habits and your routine, so you make it a priority. I think there are so many firms out there that respect when you say, hey, I can come in on Saturday and finish this up, but I have a soccer game in the morning. I will be here no later than 10. People actually admire that you're taking a priority for yourself, health-wise, social-wise, and you're putting that first. And then you're still reporting to duty afterwards and showing your commitment. Having fun is so important for your mental well-being and your productivity. If you are working, say, like 7 days a week for 4 weeks straight, and you're not taking any time for yourself, your productivity is not going to be at the same level that it would be if you had taken some time off and had fun. Also, your families and friends are going to miss you during law school and while you're at your first job. So whatever time you can fill in with family and friends, they'll love and they'll respect that you're making it a priority to be with them. So I zoomed through that really fast. We can come back to it, but I'm going to go on to the next one. Make the most of your first job. So you're out of college, you're out of law school, you have a whole lot of debt. You just feel like this weight on your shoulders. I do know that there's still a lot of these programs being offered saying that if you go into the government sector or the city sector and work at a lower paying job, you might get loan forgiveness. So that's something to consider on where you're planning on working. But I want to give you a warning and see, I'm a tax accountant, not an attorney. So you can't rely on what I'm about to say. So it's a personal opinion. But I have yet to see a single loan be forgiven. I have a client who's a psychologist. She's worked for the city for the past 10 years. She is paid $40,000 a year. And the whole reason she took this job was because she wanted her psychology license and schooling to be forgiven. And she's done everything right. And we still have not seen any approval of them for forgoing her loan. And I think her loan's at $300,000 now. And that was 10 years ago, you know? So be careful about when you go that path, because there are these promises of student loan forgiveness, but I have yet to see any. So it might be something to explore. But while you have that weight on your shoulders, there's nothing you can do. You've got the benefit of going to the school you went to. You have the debt. You're going to live with it. You're going to figure out a way to get through it. But what's most important is do your job, make your money, and make sure that you've got your money working for you in a savvy way, a tax savvy way, so that the burden that you're carrying is less than what it could be. Because what you could have is your student loan debt, credit card debt, tax debt, and then having to try and figure out if you claim bankruptcy. Maybe you can self-represent. I don't know, but I don't want you to go there. So when you're thinking about your first job, the first thing to do is make sure that your withholdings on your payroll is accurate. If you're bad at saving, or if you're good at saving, these things come into play. But normally I say when you fill out your W-4 form for the IRS, and here in California, we have a DE-4 form, you put single zero. And what this means is that they're going to withhold the most they can for income taxes. And at the end of the year, when you file your return, if you've over withheld, you're going to get a refund. What I like about this option when you're first out of school is that you've never had a job that's paying, say, $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, whatever it is right now. And so you're adjusting to living on having a budget. And so if you learn to live on a smaller budget and then at the end of the year get a $5,000 refund, then you can take that $5,000 refund and do something substantial with it rather than dining out all the time, or maybe you like shopping for clothes. You know, there's ways to spend the money as it flows in slowly. And then there's ways to do it with a plan at the end of the year when it's a big chunk of money. So withholdings is important. The next one is benefits. So hopefully you'll be at a job where on your start date or within the first month, they're going to offer you medical insurance, vision insurance, dental insurance. It's important to sit down with somebody who understands these and helps you pick the right plan for yourself. You guys are young, and if you don't have any pre-existing medical conditions, you may want to consider something that would allow you to have something called a health savings account, which is an HSA. And that requires a high deductible insurance, health insurance plan. And that just means you pay a lot more out of pocket, but your monthly payments are smaller. Now, if the firm's paying for it, then really you don't really have to go that route. But if you're having to pay for a portion of your own medical insurance, then that is something to consider. The FSA is called a flexible spending account. And where that comes in is say you can estimate how much you are going to spend in contacts for the year, how much you're going to spend in dental copays and copays going to the doctor and prescriptions. If you can guess how much you're going to use, you can set that aside out of your paycheck and it's pre-tax. So that money is not subject to tax. So if you set aside $1,000, that's $1,000 that you're not having to pay taxes on. And then you just get it reimbursed over time by submitting receipts. And it's a good tax savings opportunity. The next is retirement. So most firms are going to be able to offer you 401k. Sometimes when it's a smaller plan, you have to wait a year to be eligible to participate in the 401k. Bigger firms normally make you wait a month or a couple of months to participate. The maximum you can contribute to your 401k is $19,500, which is a lot. So normally where financial advisors, not a financial advisor, but normally where financial advisors like to start you is if your firm has a match, you want to do as much as the match. So say they're going to match you up to the first 6% of your salary. You want to try and do 6% of a contribution to your retirement so that the firm is matching you for that 6%. The other thing is called a Roth Ira, backdoor IRA. So a Roth IRA is like an individual retirement account, but it's Roth. The cool thing about Roth is you put the money in, it's after tax money. And then what happens is whatever growth on that investment is tax-free, so that when you take the money out, you get 100% of it tax-free. So say you put in $10,000, it grows by $3,000 when you're 50, 60, or required to take it when you're 70, then you're able to take out $13,000 without any tax ramifications. So I'm going to zoom forward to the end of my document because I have a little story to show you about how important retirement is, especially when you're young. Okay, so investing early versus later. Here's Tara. At age 21, she only puts $2,000 per year into a retirement account. Imagine this is a Roth, okay? So then at age 31, she stops contributing completely. So over those 10 years, she's put together $20,000 of contributions. If you assume that the stock market is going to have an 8% average rate of return, at the end, when she's 67 years old, she's going to have $499,659 tax-free money. Now, here's the example of what happens when you start late. You just start when you start, but if I can get you to start early, that's the most important. Nancy, age 37, she contributes $2,000 annually every single year until she's 67. So 30 years later, she's stopped contributing. She's put a total of $62,000 into her retirement account. Assuming the same rate of return of the 8%, at age 67, she only has $246,691. So she has half the amount, even though she contributed for 30 years, whereas Tara only contributed for 10 years and she's got twice the amount. So if you're able to participate and set up your own Roth account, then it's money. As soon as you can do that, you do it. And the idea is to contribute anything to an IRA, you have to have earned income. So if you want to do the max, which is $6,000, then what you want to do is make sure that you had a job that year or internship or something that year where you're claiming $6,000 worth of earned income so that you can do a $6,000 contribution to an IRA. So that's the importance of retirement. So I'm going back up. Pay yourself first. So there's this guy named David Bach, and he wrote this book. First, he started off with Smart Women Finish Rich. Then he came up with Smart Couples Finish Rich. And then he came up with the Automatic Millionaire. If you read one of them, you're going to get basically all the tips. And each one of these are links to Amazon, so you can order a copy if you want to. I have no referral agreement with him. I just really believe in the book. But what it means is that if you make $5,000 a month, set aside $200 every month into a savings account and don't touch it. And you'll learn to live on less money. And so that when it comes to vacation time, when it comes to getting your parents a Christmas present, when it comes to something where you needed savings for, you have that money set aside because it's out of sight, out of mind. And last one is network. Now, it's even more important to network out of school than when you're in school because you never know where your next job is going to be. You never know where the next friend is going to be. And there are just so many amazing people out there that by talking with people and building your leadership skills, building your networking skills, meeting people. It's just a really great thing to do. Also, if you, as you progress in your law firm careers, recruiting new clients is going to be very important. If you want to make partner, you have to be able to bring in new business. You need to bring in value. And a lot of the time, they relate value to the fee you're charging a client. So you don't always have to look at it as, oh, I'm going to get this client for myself. When you're young, you can still bring in clients to the firm that are amazing, and the partners are going to have to handle it, but you're going to still have credit for bringing that person into the firm. So the more people you meet, the more opportunities open up for you personally and on a business level. I'm not going to talk about the tax tips. Those are at the bottom of the document. If we run out of things to talk about, I'll go to those. But I think this is a good time just to let you guys ask questions, discuss, and see if there's anything else I can add or help out with.
Okay, someone messaged me about how she couldn't make it to this, but she's looking forward to watching the recording. But she was asking, how do you network with professors? Because she feels awkward. Here, she just said she doesn't know how to talk to professors because she's not like reaching out to them during office hours because she feels like she understands the content. So how does she, I guess, get comfortable with a professor?
Yeah, so I would say office hours are great. Very few people actually use them. Also, professors see people during office hours that are normally struggling. So if you're not struggling, it's actually impressive that you're still coming to office hours. There's a fine line between brown nosing and actually networking. So you want to be careful with how you approach that. However, if you feel that you understand everything in class, then maybe it's an opportunity to sit down with a professor and see like, okay, well, how would it relate to this case? Or, I'm reading ahead because I think I'm on top of these items. The other thing is once you've taken a test, right? Say you've taken a test, it's really hard to get a perfect score on a test. So if there's one or two things on your test where you're like, gosh, I really thought I understood that topic, that's when you go talk to your professor during office hours and say, look, I understand I got this wrong. I'm not here to fight the score, but can you help me understand this concept better so that I know how to apply it in the future? Because so much of law and tax law is based on the fundamentals, on the foundation. And so being able to then build on that foundation and be able to interpret technical items and be able to apply what you know of the history of the law helps you guess how they're going to advance. So for example, during COVID, we had PPP loans. And nobody knew what they were doing. The banks didn't know what they were doing. Accountants didn't know what we were doing. So what we had to do is we had to fall back on our foundational knowledge of the tax law to figure out what's going to happen, how long is it going to take for new legislation to happen, and where do we think, given the trend of how tax laws have been passed, how do we think this is going to proceed? So now we're up against the situation where the PPP loan, people are supposed to be able to apply for forgiveness, but a lot of the banks aren't accepting forgiveness applications. The forgiveness application is supposed to be submitted and approved by March 30th, but the banks, even on February 18th, aren't accepting forgiveness applications. So I can say out of the knowledge that I've been able to build on my foundation that, hey, they're going to have to extend that deadline because there's no way that they're going to be able to tell people, well, you're out of luck. So I think just being able to build on something that you want to improve is how you can network with professors. Another thing is that you might want to be looking at current events and you might want to see how current cases are going. It's kind of like an extracurricular activity or a hobby, right? And so you can approach your professor and say, hey, I see this case. This is what they are using as their support. And have you been following it? What's your opinion? Because professors have very strong opinions and they love to be able to talk about their opinions. So that was a very long answer, but I think there's some different ideas within that answer that can help you figure out a way to relate to a professor. If it's too intimidating to relate to a professor, start small. Start by networking with the librarian, start networking with some other students, start networking with a teacher's assistant or some sort of support, and build yourself up to talking with a professor.
I had a question, Louise.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all this. I think particularly with the tips for college and law school, a lot of them like hit home. They're like, oh, it's good affirmation that I'm doing a good number of these. So thanks for that. But I wanted to hone in on, you mentioned within networking, this idea of financial literacy, just because all the other concepts such as networking with professors and such, I've been able to figure out on my own or kind of just by happenstance, fake it until you make it, go out there, fail once, and then do better the next time.
Yeah.
But as for financial literacy, I just had zero grid for how to start learning about it, how to start a budget. I know that there are offices in my school that sometimes put on workshops, but I've attended some of those and it still just kind of goes over my head. So I don't know if you have any more specifics on like where I can start or who I can talk to as a student.
Yeah. So those free workshops and stuff that they put on, they're great. They can be pretty dry and they could be so dumbed down that you're like, this isn't going to help me. So if you could look on Amazon and just check out one of those books, I would say for you, probably The Automatic Millionaire would be really good. It's broken into really easy reading. You could read a chapter a night. It talks about budgeting, but it doesn't focus on budgeting, because what it does is it tells you what to do with the money before you even start budgeting. Because what happens is that the common mistake is that say you're making $5,000 a year or $5,000 a month. And you're like, okay, well, I have $5,000 a month, so I'm going to make a budget off of that. No, wrong. You want to say, I have $4,000 a month and have the other 1,000 going to somewhere else. If you're contributing to retirement, that counts as that $1,000, so whatever money you're putting somewhere out of sight, out of mind, tied up, that's not part of your budget. So then you're down with your $4,000, and then you figure out, okay, what's rent, what's food, what's fun, what kind of allowance do I need for clothes, what not, but I think what I admire about this book is that it gives you so many strategies to apply to saving money so that when you're doing your daily affairs, you're not overdoing it. But don't get me wrong, I love to splurge once in a while because I think I've earned it. So one of the things he talks about in this book is the Latte Factor. You can have a person go to Starbucks every day and buy a latte for $4, okay? What does that $4 add up to in a month, a year? What if they'd taken that $4 a month or a day, a month, a year, and invested that in the stock market with an 8% average return? How much would they have then at the end of the year instead of, a belly full of a latte, So there's these sort of just ways to program your mind to understand where are you spending your money and how could you spend it better. The pay yourself first part is really important, and you'll get that throughout the book. And this particular book, I read it when I was 23, and I was able to buy a home here in California with my, he was my boyfriend, but once we were moved in, he was my fiance. But we were able to buy my first home when I was 25, and I had to come up with a $90,000 down payment. And so within 2.5 years, I was able to get close to that down payment and then borrow money from my mom. I think I borrowed $15,000 from her to get me to the next level. But this book is what did it for me. So it's just so easy to see yourself and your friends just go overboard with the first job and overspend. But remember, you need to take it slow. You have the student loans you have to pay on. And remember, a way around student loans is go back to school. If you have the capacity and you don't have the money with the job that you're doing, but the job is fulfilling, go and take classes part-time, and that could possibly postpone when your loan starts. But yeah, I don't have anything else for you, but I do think that you would be pretty well received by that book.
Yeah, I'll definitely go check it out. I think it's $10 on Amazon, so that's an easy enough. That's like what, 2 lattes. So
Yeah, exactly. And then if you like it so much, you can always pass it along to someone else after you've reaped the rewards, or you know what to get someone else when they start their job at the new law firm and need to know what to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
I had a quick question.
Absolutely.
So it's still going with that networking thing. What are some best ways to kind of keep track of all the people that you meet and connect with? Because I'm just like, once I entered law school, I'm attending all these events, and they're like I'm trying to connect with all these people who attend or like that speak at the events, but it's just like I'm trying to keep building those relationships, but some people I feel like just get lost and
yeah. Do you use Gmail?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's ways to schedule things in Gmail, so you can have follow-up emails scheduled to go out a week from now. So there's one, and that's part of sales too. So being able to follow up with people is part of sales, and networking is following up. So the other thing is I normally put something in my calendar. So right now what's happening for me is I have a lot of young entrepreneurs that are starting up their businesses, but they can't afford my tax prep fee. And so I say, okay, when you hit at least $75,000 of gross revenue, or you've been in business for 3 years, reach out to me. And so what I've started doing is I started putting it in my calendar for a year from when I made the call with that person and told them that right now it doesn't seem like we're a good fit because I can't take their money. I'll reach out to them a year from now when it hits my calendar. And that calendar event will say their name. It'll have something that reminds me of that person in there. And then it also has their phone number and their email address. And so that way it makes it easy. So at 9 o'clock a year from now, I will get that reminder on Google Calendar. I'll copy and paste all that stuff into an email, and then I'll just follow up with them. And, making someone feel special is the number one way to get to them. And so there is some narcissism linked with people. And whenever you start a conversation with a person's name and make sure you end a conversation with a person's name, always top notch, always very flattering. Same thing if they mention, oh my goodness, I love chocolate. And then you find out, oh my goodness, this lady down the street just started making chocolate and she puts whiskey in it. You go, hey, if they're a really great person, you just say, hey, I just ran into this lady who's selling chocolate here. Here's her website, and I think you'll love it. Or if they made a better impression on you, you go and help that business out and say, hey, I just met somebody who loves chocolate. How much would it cost for you to send this to their home or send this to their place of work? And so just sending them a little something is also helpful. I guess it could be kind of linked to bribery or flattery, but I think it helps. Some people are very receptive to gifts, right? So there's this book out there called The 5 Love Languages, and you can actually use that across the board. You can use that with your spouse, your kids, your parents, whoever. And if you're able to determine who you're talking to and guess what drives them, it makes it a lot easier to connect with them and figure out a way to relate things. Another tip for you is it's hard in COVID. I know it is. But say you meet somebody at a networking event and you really enjoyed hanging out with them. And so what you do then is when you see another event come up with a different organization, you just forward the announcement to that person and say, hey, I'm going to this. I had such a great time with you at the last one. Do you want to join me? And so that way, if they come late or early, you'll meet up, but also you have the opportunity to meet other people. I am an introvert, but I love networking. It's exhausting. When I come home, I need at least an hour or two to just kind of veg out, drink a cup of tea, just kind of wind down and get back to work. But it's awkward and sometimes intimidating to walk into a room where you don't know anybody and try and network. And so slowly picking out people and figuring out something to start a conversation about is helpful. I normally like to do it near the food table because I'm always hungry and always there for the free food. So there's always something you can talk about there, or you can compliment somebody on something. This goes back into feeding the narcissism, right? You say, oh my goodness, your shoes are amazing. Where did you get them? Or you talk about something else, you know? But even as you're walking down the street, if you see a man or a woman, they're wearing a beautiful coat, stop them and just tell them how beautiful their coat is. Practice with strangers, and it makes it easier. But back to what you actually asked, follow up. Making notes. So what I do is every time I call someone on my phone on a new number, I put their name in, but I also put in parentheses something about them, right? So Rick the plumber or Julio the electrician, so that when I'm like, oh shit, I need an electrician, I just go electrician and there's Julio's name, because when you just put someone's name in there, you're not going to remember, wait, who's Julio, So that's something else that helps me. But something fun that might be good is to do some sort of memory class or a memory strategy thing, or suggest to some organization that's doing things, or even here on this Leg Up Legal, have someone come in and talk about how to remember people's names. Because so much of follow-up is remembering people, remembering their names, remembering something iconic about them, and being able to follow up with them once they cross your mind. So, but yeah, back to that narcissism again, right? Start the conversation with a person's name, end a conversation with a person's name. And it's so impressive when you do that on the first time meeting them. And then they'll go, wait, what was your name again? Because they haven't been paying attention. So. Yep.
Thank you. That the name thing I'm gonna remember now.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just as important. Yeah. It's just like when I'm on the phone with like my software company, when my software isn't working for tax season, as soon as they say their name, I write it down. And so at the end of the call, I just say, thank you so much for helping me resolve this issue. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Because you can imagine how some of these people on the phone, like even if you're talking to Comcast, right? You can imagine how some people can just get so angry and nasty and ruin someone's day, that when you come along and say their name at the end and wish them a wonderful day, how much better they feel.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Can I add something? I think
Yeah.
I can partially answer Azalea's question, but also builds off of this idea of narcissism. I think particularly with lawyers in the legal industry, a question that I love asking folks in networking settings is, what did you do to get to where you are right now? Like, what has your career path been? And I think earlier there was also a question about professors. That's the one I lead with, because I was interested in how they actually get to be where they are and what practice areas they have done before actually being in academia. But I think it also works equally as well with lawyers, because they love talking about themselves. A lot of narcissism. Maybe it's not always just true by narcissism. A lot of them actually do want to share about their path and try to help you on your own legal career. At least that's what I have found in my own experience in talking to them.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, coming up with those topics of unique questions that you can ask is helpful. Having a hobby and being able to say, oh, what are you doing this weekend, and find out what they're doing. And then you play soccer every Saturday, like having something to talk about is just really fun and different. It also makes you memorable. So, yeah, I'm trying to think of any other questions. Well, when I was telling Stephanie at the beginning that I didn't take a gap year. I did an internship in London for AIG, the insurance company, after or between my junior and senior year of college. And what was very interesting about living in London, not doing like a study abroad school program, but living in London and working in London, I got to understand how the communities and the locals worked and everything. But what was interesting was when I would go to the pub and start a conversation with a colleague or just a stranger, we would never talk about where we worked. We never talk what kind of car we drove. We never talked about where we lived. We talked about where we traveled, where our next vacation is, what's next on our list of things that we are ambitious about. And what I really loved about that is it helped you dream big. So that can also be another way to have a conversation topic. It's like, well, now you're here. Are you striving for something else? You know? Yeah. And along the way from networking, you will come across opportunities where you can be a mentor or a mentee to the person you're talking with. And there is a stigma that mentors have to be older than you. But I've been finding out from so many women that I network with that they're realizing that they're having way more fun being mentored by, Gen Xers, Gen Ys, or millennials than they could ever imagine, because they feel like they're so behind in technology and how things are out there that they have a lot of fun and they feel that they're learning way more than what they're able to offer people.
This has been super awesome for networking. I kind of want to go back to money
Taxes?
a little bit.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you have any tips for what like a student should do who has maybe like a part-time job, not a full actual job? Is there any money tips that a student should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to make sure you have a free checking account. You want to make sure that you have only one credit card. A lot of students just stick to a debit card, right? Because it's all going in and out of a fixed account. You don't have to worry about paying a credit card once a month and missing it and then paying fees and interest and so on. The other thing is a budget. So figuring out, okay, this is what my real monthly budget is. This is how much rent is. This is how much all the other things that go into there. This is how much I'm bringing to the table. And that percentage is 20%. The other 80% is student loans or credit card debt that you have to assume just so that you can get through. And just realizing how little you can live on to get it to stretch. I think that spreadsheets are great. If you're good with spreadsheets, if you're not a spreadsheet person, then find a budget book. There are tons of options out there. I haven't used any, but they are like almost like daily planners, and they can have like written things in there for the budget. I'm sure there's budgeting apps. Also, if that doesn't work, then fall back on the cash method, as long as you have a safe place to hide your cash, and have envelopes, and have this envelope is going to have all my rent money in it, and that's going to go out in the first. This envelope is for food. This envelope is for entertainment. This envelope is for this. And whenever you get cash, you allocate it to each one of those categories. And so, hey, you want to go see a movie with friends outside of COVID, then you go to your entertainment envelope and you see, okay, I've got $40 in here. Am I going to blow this whole $40 on this one event? Or am I going to say, hey, how about we rent a movie and grab popcorn and watch a movie at your house? Or something like that. There's just so many fun things that you can do that are on a tight budget versus a big budget. But then there's also like, oh my goodness, I just helped with this amazing case. I wrote 100 pages for it and I got a pat on the back. I deserve a dinner out for $50. The other thing as a student, and I'm assuming we're talking about students that are 21, is going out for drinks is expensive. It's a lot of fun, but it's expensive. You can have a really fun night by buying your own bottle of wine and paying corkage, or drinking at home, or drinking at someone's backyard, or drinking somewhere legal outside. There's just, you just have to figure out where are you spending money. So not only in that budget are you keeping track of how to spend the money, like how the categories work, but you also want to pay attention to how you're actually spending the money so that at the end of the month, say you're over budget, no problem. That's going to happen as long as you're not like negative money, right? But you're over the budget. So you see what categories you're over budget by and you figure out, well, did I splurge? Was it a one-time thing or is this something I do all the time? And then you recalibrate. So there are going to be some months that are going to be super tricky, and there's going to be some months where you're going to have some excess. Definitely around the holidays, you want to have a little extra. You have your savings so that you can go away for a weekend and have fun. Because if you think about a person who's doing a crash diet, right? They're sticking to the plan for 3 days, they're killing it, and then day 4, they have a bad hair day, a big zit comes up on their head, and they just think the world is ending, and they go and binge. And that's what we're trying to avoid doing, is creating a way to be consistent with your money and be kind to yourself, but also be realistic so it can be steady going as you go through it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. Faye has a question, but okay, Faye's audio isn't working, but
Okay.
Faye is asking, could you please give some suggestions on what international students or permanent residents could do on investing in the US?
That's a tricky one. Okay, so it depends on how long you plan on being in the States. It also depends on how for sure you are that your current employer, your current situation is going to be able to allow you to have your visa or have your residency, right? Because what happens is that, and I'm sure you've seen this and felt this, the only way you can apply for visas is as a student or as an employee. And when you apply for a visa as an employee, you have to prove that you're bringing a asset, talent, or skill to the United States to offer that the employer cannot find anywhere else. Now, it's hard to debate that that's the case when there's huge levels of unemployment. Because if there's huge levels of unemployment, there are tons of people out there that are US citizens that have the same skill set that could have that spot. So if you ever are considering of becoming a permanent resident or getting a green card, you definitely want to start looking into immigration attorneys and have an immigration attorney in your pocket so that if something happens with your visa, you know exactly who to call when the situation arises. And also they'll be able to give you some suggestions. If they know of your case ahead of time, then the fees tend to be a little bit different because you're not having to build this relationship in a time of crisis. Now, back to money and being a non-resident or a student. Retirement, you really want to be careful with that one. So I don't want you to be contributing to a 401k and then leave and distribute it when you're young before the age of 50 and a half. Or 59 and a half, because then there's a 10% penalty and that distribution is taxable. So say you do a 401k for 5 years, then you decide, oh, forget this. America's crazy. I'm going home. And so you cash out a $50,000 401k. You're going to have to pay your effective tax rate on that $50,000 of income because it's a distribution, counts as income. Plus, you're going to be paying another $5,000 in penalties because you're distributing that money too early before you're 59 and a half. So I would say the best way to go would be a Roth Ira, because as long as you can prove that the money you're putting in there is basis, pre-tax money or post-tax money, and it's basis. Say you put in $6,000 in the first year, $6,000 in the second year, $6,000 in the third year. That means you have $18,000 in there. And it's been in there for consistently for 3 or 4 years. And say you decide, okay, America's crazy, I'm leaving, I want a distribution of my Roth. Then what's going to happen is that they're going to be able to return that $18,000. And as long as you check a few boxes of eligibility requirements, you'll also be able to get the growth tax-free. So I would say that would be probably the best one for savings. Investment wise, like stock, I think is safe because you can own stock in a different country. You just have to pay attention to how your country that you return to taxes on foreign income. So the unique thing about the US, and a few other countries are like this too, is that as long as you're a resident or a citizen, you're taxed on your worldwide income. So when I worked over in London and I earned money, when I came back and filed my US tax return, I had to include that amount in my income for the tax preparation. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of being a US citizen and then traveling and working somewhere else, is that as long as you're a US citizen or resident, you're supposed to declare 100% of your worldwide income. I'm just trying to think of what else there is. I believe setting up bank accounts and credit cards are pretty easy here in the States, so that's not necessarily something we have to talk about. I would just keep it simple, keep it as few as possible. I know in England, I had a hell of a time trying to get a bank account because the UK is known for being a great gateway for money laundering. So they're very tight on opening up bank accounts. Otherwise, yeah, I would just say be very wary of setting up a 401k and everything until you have an idea what your long-term plan is.
And then a follow-up question in the chat box from Faye. Do permanent residents get the same financial benefits or financial opportunities as a US citizen?
They should. I think that would definitely be a case of equity. So yeah, they should have the same access to everything. I mean, if they have a visa, they have a social security number, they have everything, they should have the same rights to health insurance and dental and vision as anybody else in a firm. While you're at school, you should have the same rights to medical insurance and everything else at the local health organization that's linked with the school. I think if you deal, I'm making an assumption here, opinion here, warning. I think if you end up at a smaller firm, they may make you feel like you need to be very appreciative and honor them because they've gone through all this bother of getting you a visa and employing you, and they just kind of hire the lawyers and all the other things to make it all work. So sometimes I'm sure at smaller firms, they put a lot of weight on you because of the inconvenience related to having a foreign employee. However, on the flip side, a lot of the immigration attorneys I work with, they are helping employees at high-tech companies, and the high-tech companies cannot find people locally that have the skill set, discipline, and drive that these foreign nationals have. So high-tech companies, they rely on a foreign workforce. So it really depends. I think the most important thing to do is not dwell on whether you're limited or that the opportunities are different. It's just thinking about how grateful you are to have a position and keep on adding to the pot of what your skill set is and what you can offer the employer and the community by being who you are.
All right, I guess I'll give a last call for any last questions. Okay, if not,
Can I add something real quick?
Yes.
Okay, so only thing from the tax tips that I didn't go over that I really want you guys to understand are tax returns are as unique as a thumbprint. So your tax situation is going to be different from someone else's tax situation. So never try and compare and never try and take someone else's tax advice unless they're a CPA and they can sign on it. The other thing is that you guys are totally eligible for using TurboTax and maybe even using VITA, which is the IRS volunteer free tax preparation. When you want to hire a tax professional is if you have employee stock options, which isn't going to happen unless you're general counsel to like Google or some public company, right? Rental properties, well, you go if you've got a rental property. Businesses, now remember Airbnb counts as a business. So if you do Airbnb for more than 14 days, you've got a business, you might want to talk to a professional. And if you end up having an interest in any sort of businesses and have a K1 or some sort of investment interest, it really helps to have a CPA. Otherwise, TurboTax is great. That's how we'll keep you out of trouble. Okay, now you can go.
Okay, awesome wrap up about taxes for us. Yeah, so we have these events every Tuesday and Thursday. And next week we actually have our Friday virtual happy hour where you can network with everyone. So you can drop in every week. We have these events. Thank you again, Louise, for an amazing event today. And bye, everyone.